In this video, we're going to show you the concept of data tags and how they can be leveraged to dynamically create data security constraints or criteria or filters versus hard coding actual constraints. There's a couple different areas where we have data tags. So the first one I'm going to show you is what we call a profile-based data tag. I'm going to go into my permissions and look at my user profiles. And as it sounds, a profile-based tag will be based on variables that come from the user profile. You'll notice a couple different fields here when you build a new user: first name, last name, login, email, company. We've added a couple tags here, which you can treat kind of as any kind of variable you like. You notice in this case, I have a first name and a last name. So we're going to build a dynamic policy, which is going to leverage this first name and last name and pass that in and limit this particular user to only seeing things that belong to them. So I've got a couple of users that we can test with. So take a note of first name and last name, and we have those fields populated. I'm going to pop into my data security. First, I'll show you how we used to do that. It used to be hard coded. So the policy constraints, as you'll see here, sales rep name had a specific name assigned to it. And this would be the same for a tenant ID. Each one of your customers, each one of your tenants, each one of your departments would have a specific policy. And then you'll see that it was assigned to that specific person or to a group or tenant of people. So if you had a lot, then you had to use the API to programmatically copy these, or you just had to manually go through and create them all. Leveraging data tags, we can now get that down to just one. So what I'm going to do is create a new policy. And I'm going to call this data tag sales rep. Let's save that. And then we'll edit that and we'll set up a constraint. Now we're going to build the constraint the same exact way. In this case, I'm going to pick sales rep. It'll pop up the ability for me to set my criteria. I'm going to build my criteria, but now instead of hard coding a field, I'm going to go down and I'm going to pick custom value. And I'm going to actually put in the syntax of my data tags. And what that syntax is going to be a /pound, the name of the tag, in this case, first name, /. So it's going to start with a /pound. It's going to end with a /. That's going to be unique enough so that it's not mistaken anywhere else that you might be doing a query. In this case, I'm going to hit a space and I'm going to put the last name as well. So now I've got my data tags dynamically added. Let's add those to the table. Now when I look at my constraint, I don't have that hard-coded anymore. Now the last step is I still have to assign it to either specific users or a group. And in this case, I'm going to assign it to a group, my sales team. The entire sales team will now use this as their constraint. Let's go ahead and save that. Then I'm going to turn this one on. I'm going to turn this one off so it doesn't interfere with our testing. So now let's log in as a couple sales reps and see it in action. First, I'll log in as Vicky. Now that's going to pass that first name and last name dynamically into the query. And even though she's looking at the same dashboard as everyone else, you'll notice the sales rep name is now limited to Vicky LaFlame. Let's go take a look at our sales rep name, Zane Levy. I'll log in as that user. And you're going to see, again, they're going to be looking at the same dashboard, but their data is dynamically now going to be constrained. And I didn't have to set up multiple policies to do that. Using the profile-based data tags, that's all now going to be handled. Now let's take a look at another method, which is even more powerful. I'm going to log back in because there are situations where you want to do quite a bit from a data tag perspective and beyond the scope of just a profile-based data tag. So let's go back into permissions. And there's a new icon up here in the upper right. This is where you can actually create now group-based or user-based data tags. So I'm going to go ahead and click in that. You'll see it's blank by default. I'm going to go ahead and create a new data tag. And I'm going to call this one tenant. You'll notice I can make this a numeric, character, or date time. We're going to do character-based, but you're probably, if your tenant IDs are numeric, then you would use numeric. And I'm not going to give it a default value. We're going to talk about that in a second, or I'm not going to define a tag group now. I'm just going to hit save and get our data tag. Let's edit this and see what we can do. You'll notice it's active by default. To turn it off, I just uncheck that. And you'll see that I can now enable for any of my teams or tenants or groups a specific value here and have that enabled. And I can also enable it for specific users. In terms of order of precedence, it's going to take the user, if there's a user profile defined, it's going to use that. So you could have a user as a member of a group and still have a more specific data tag that's passed if you have a user assignment. So it's user assignment and then that, and then we'll talk again about this default. So let's say in this particular case, we want to limit Zane and Vicky to certain accounts. Let's say we want to limit Zane to just one account of his called Umbrella Corporation. I'm going to put that in as a value. I'm going to enable that. And for Vicky, we're going to do an in list in this case. We're going to give Vicky multiple accounts that she can manage. Now you'll notice the syntax here when you're doing a character-based in list. Very important that you list your accounts or your character-based words, and you put a single tick, comma, single tick, no spaces between it. You'll notice I've got a single tick, comma, single tick between everything, but I do not put that single tick at the beginning or the end of the string. I'll show you that in action in a second, but I'm going to just paste that in as is. If you're doing a numeric set of IDs here, there's no ticks needed. This is just for character-based things. So you would just put 14, comma, 15, comma, 16 if you wanted to give them those three particular IDs in this case. I'm going to also add a default value of tree quote. We'll come back and we'll take a look at that in a second. I'm going to save this, and just creating the data tag does nothing. It just makes it eligible to be used in security policies or criteria builders or filters and things like that. What I'm going to do now is go and put this tenant data tag into action. I'm going to do that back in my data security. Now I have a couple choices here. I can create a whole new policy and make a policy based on that tenant data tag. What that's going to do is if I have one person in multiple policies, it's going to be an or relationship. It's going to say this or that. So it's going to kind of be a superset of data that's returned. In this case, I want it to be an ANDed relationship, meaning I'm going to put it inside the existing policy so that if I have multiple constraints in one policy, those are going to be ANDed. It's going to be the most restricted a way to do it. So what I'm going to do is go back into here to add a new constraint. Same app. This time I'm going to pick the customer account. And instead of doing an equal, we're going to use enlist. And I'm going to use that same syntax, /pound tenant pound slash. So very easy to add these. And the enlist is actually a very powerful way to leverage data tags. So I'm going to hit finish. Now you'll see I've got that ANDed. I've got my group assigned. I'm going to hit save. Now, let's go and take a look at the impact of what that's going to do to Vicky. Before, she had many, many different accounts that she had access in that one particular dashboard that she was looking at. Now, the combination of limiting her by her name as well as to those three accounts, you'll see that now she only sees those three specific accounts. So you can imagine that if this was a multi-tenant type of environment, it would be the one. And I won't log into Zane, but it's the same thing. Now Zane is limited to just that single account that we gave him access to. I'm going to wrap up this video by talking about the fallback, which is a very important concept. Now, my administrator is not defined in any of that. If we go back, let's do a quick review and look at the data tags. Tenant has a fallback, but if I look at my group assignments, it's not enabled for the administrators. And of course, I did not give a user assignment for the admin. But what would happen if I actually put the administrator in that security policy, or somehow they ran a report that used this data tag as a constraint? Well, they're going to use that default value of tree quote. I'm going to show you that in action. Let's pop back under data security. I'm going to edit this. Since the admin, the first name is not going to it's going to be ANDed, and they don't have a sales rep. I'm going to turn this off. What I'm going to do is just add in the administrators group for this test. So what this is going to do is apply the administrators group to this particular constraint that has a data tag for tenant, but they don't have any value defined in the tenant data tag. So let's go ahead and save that. I'll hop into the builder, and we're just going to run a really quick report off of that app. And let's bring in the account name. And you'll see now dynamically that fallback kicks in. And this particular user who doesn't have a value assigned is now only able to see the fallback value. So extremely powerful feature. If you do have any questions or need any help or want to talk through your particular security roles and permissions and how to set this up in the best way, just reach out to us. Support at Yurbi.com.